Okay, we start the new Masechta, Baba Basra, Parak HaShutfim. So, okay, first of all, we thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. In the source of our learning, we should have the basic English immediately. And we're learning the Nishmas as have a Golda Bas Baruch Binyamin and San Alzev Ben Benzina. Thank you. And before Shlema for Abin David Ben Sarah, for Gedalia Getzel Eliezer Ben Figitzipar. Okay. The Mishnah starts off. Partners that agreed to make a wall or a division in a courtyard. We'll see what the word mechitza means, if it's a noun or a verb. If they wanted to build a wall, or do they want to divide? Mechitza could mean a division. And the Gemara is going to make a halachic difference between if we translate this as a noun or a verb. So, what's the rule? Whichever way we do this. The rule is the Mishnah is concerned about what's going to happen when the wall falls down, who's going to take the area of the wall, who's going to take the stones. So before we start, because it's going to be divided later, or actually, that's not the way it works. The way it works is that each of them have an obligation to give equal parts for the wall. So therefore, when they divide it later, they're each going to have that area under the wall. They're going to divide it in half, and they're going to have half the stones as well. So makim shenagu livnei skvil gazes krisin levenim bainim. Whatever the custom is for the material of the wall, which, like we said in Baba Metzia, we learned that there was a concept of walls that were 6 tvachim or 5 tvachim, or 4 tvachim or 3 tvachim. That's the wall that you have to use in this courtyard. And most of the they didn't have air conditioning back then, so they did a lot of stuff outside in the courtyard. What was the house? The house was for sleeping, or eating, or whatever. But they did cooking and work and laundry, and all of that stuff was outside. So the wall over here was giving privacy for them to do all their things. There's 2 people in this courtyard, two houses, and they decided that they want to divide. I want my side of the courtyard, and you take your side of the courtyard. So they're going to put up a wall, and the wall would give them privacy. Now, is there a halachic demand for privacy? That's gonna be a discussion. It's called hezekriya. Is hezekriya considered a real damage? Okay, so let's see. Everything goes according to the custom of the place. We're talking about the size of the wall. That means, the way Taisvus learns this, is that it didn't have to be exactly this size. If the custom was a little different than 6 or 5 or 4, it could go beneath that. There was a limit to how low the wall could go, though. Now the Mishnah goes through, very interesting, why it has to do this. I'm not sure. Gvil, if the custom is to do a wall that's gvil, which is stones that are not smoothed off at the edges. So zen nice and gimel tvachim, zen nice and gimel tvachim. Each one's going to have to give 3 tvachim of their property to build a wall, because it's a total of 6. And if it's begazis, if it's the smaller stones that are chiseled, that are smoothed off on the side, so it's only 5 tvachim. So zen nice and tvachim mechza, zen nice and tvachim mechza. The kfisim, if they're these half bricks, where each one has to give a whole brick is 3 tvachim. Half a brick is 1.5 tvachim. But you also have the mortar that goes in between them, which is another tefach. Each one's going to have to give 2.5 tvachim. I'm sorry, kfisim. Each one's going to have to give 2 tvachim. 2 tvachim, v'zenais and tvachayim. Ulevenim, if it's the regular bricks that are 3 tvachim each, so zenais and tefach mechza, v'zenais and tefach mechza. Each one's going to have to give a tefach and a half of their property. As they're building the wall together, and they're giving the area of the wall also together. Lefikach, and therefore, because they contributed but to the wall, im nafal hakaisel, if the wall falls down, hamakim va'avanim shel shneim, the area and the stones are divided equally between them. Yeah. If we go further, we'll realize that there could be a question on this, but let's go further first. The same thing would apply in a garden. Now, a garden is a little different than a chutzner, because in a garden you don't really do that sort of work in. A garden, you just plant. You're not doing your laundry and maybe cooking and all of that stuff that you would do in a regular courtyard. So, but on the other hand, the garden over here could be facing a courtyard. So I have someone in a garden that's just looking into a courtyard. He's not even doing anything. He's not doing anything private. He's just in his garden, probably planting or picking vegetables or whatever. He's looking into the courtyard because according to the way it's put over here in Rabbeinu Gershon, that it's a garden that's near the city. So, or that's in the city. And so he could be looking into his friend's courtyard. So Makim Shenagu Ligdar, if it's a place where they put up fences for gardens, I said, then they require him to put up the fence as well. There's a lot to discuss on this. Aval Bebika, but in a valley, which a valley is referring to a grain field. So then, Makim Shenagu Shleilig there, Ein Mechayven, I say. If the custom is not to put up a wall, then we don't require them to put up a wall. Alim Ratzef, one of them wants to put up a wall, he has to build a wall on his own property, and the baina, and he builds it. And he puts this sort of plaster on the outside of the wall. And this is interesting because the plaster on the outside of the wall protects him later on, where the neighbor may say that half the area of the wall is mine. So he puts plaster on the outside of the wall. Now, when you remove the plaster, there's always a mark there. So if someone removed the plaster, you'd be able to tell if someone removed it. The reason why we put plaster on the outside of the wall and not on the inside of the wall is because if plaster on the inside of the wall would say that you're the builder, then the other guy could put plaster on the inside of his wall. And he could make it that he's the builder also. So you have to put it on the outside of the wall. When you construct the wall, you put the plaster on the outside, because the other guy that wants to put the plaster on the outside, even though he didn't build it, can't get into your property to put it up.
Some cities require the builder even to plaster the other person's, like, so it doesn't matter.
Especially when you build a fence, you're supposed to put the nice side of the fence without the beams going. You're supposed to put the nice side on the outside. Yeah.
One of the reasons.
And you have the ugly side on your side. That's the way I think you're supposed to do it.
One of the reasons that they give for that is that the kids could use the bars to climb over the fence.
Oh. Hillel is saying that the reason why they do that is because not just because it's pretty, but also because if you have the bars on the poles on the fence, then kids could climb over into the property. So you don't want that. You want it to be smooth on the outside, so it's more safe. So lefikach, and therefore because he set it up in this way, he put it on his own property. Put the chazis there so that everyone knows that this is only his fence. because this is this plaster. Therefore, if the wall falls down, so he gets that area and he also gets the stones. It must be dashleim if they both did it, and we're talking about in the valley where it's not necessary for both of them to do it. So then, they'll build it in the center. They'll put the plaster on both sides. Yeah, why do they have to do it at all? Maybe if you don't have the plaster, it's the same like two plasters. I don't know. We have to wait for the Gemara for that. And therefore, the fikach, and therefore, nafal hakaisel. If the wall falls down, the area would belong to both of them and the stones. To indicate joint ownership. But I'm just asking if they didn't do it on either side, that would just be the same as doing it on both sides, right? Okay. It is a better indicator. Okay, let's go to the Gemara because the Gemara will give us. I left out all the discussion.
Here he says that that's not the mortar; it's just a sign saying that it's ownership.
What, the chazis?
Yeah.
Yeah. So chazis is a type of plaster that would go along the top of the wall, which would indicate ownership. You put it on the outside of the wall. The question is, if you're both putting it up, I'm asking why do you both have to put it up? Just don't do either of them, and then we'll know that it belongs to both of you. If one of you puts it up, then it's one of yours.
Yeah. How would they know at that time, like where was there for you?
How did they know how where the field was up to?
We're talking about that each person will give like half of their field, like half of the
space of the wall.
Of the wall.
How did they know? They had markers, and yeah, they would have stones. They would make a stone. I remember even in Rhode Island we had a very large yard, and my neighbor had a yard as well. And in middle of the yard, between the two yards, there was a stone that had a hole in it, in the ground, and that was the line. That's the marker that said that's the end of our property.
People would move.
Yeah, that's right. But they had markers. They would measure the field, and there's a whole halachas of how to measure it in the winter or the summer. If the string gets longer, there's like all these.
Rabbi. And this border mark, what would that be?
The border marker.
Yeah.
What would it be made of?
I mean, like on that you would the marker that shows that this belongs to you, that this part of the division is yours. So
on the next page, we're going to learn about this mesipas, which would be a marker that show exactly what it's made out of. Something very thin. It wasn't something that significant. Obviously, a wall would do the job, but if there was no wall, then they would do that. Here we're talking about where they were. It's not a question of a wall or no wall here. Here, they both owned it together. And so both areas were everyone's. They were partners. And so now they're shutzman partners. It's not like it was divided or look, me and my neighbor are not partners. I have my house, he has his house. It's when we're partners, we both have the same house or both have the same, we share the backyard, we share it. Now we're dividing it up. So now we're actually getting our own area. That this is I go until here and you start from there. And so there would either be markers there to show that, or there would be a wall. And over here, we're saying, let's take a look in the Gemara. We'll see a little bit more.
Yeah, but there's some on the wall, right, that show that if it breaks, it belongs to me. And you were asking why they both need it.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the marker of who owns the wall. The marker that was a plaster that they put up. It was a plaster along the top part of the wall.
It's something that they could both see, so it wouldn't be like a question of maybe you need both because one of them might not know that the other one put a marker.
Yeah, the reason why The reason why you put it on the outside of the wall was because if you would put it on the inside, then the other guy could also put it up on the inside.
Right.
But maybe the other guy could take it down if you put it on the outside. Maybe you could take it down. So it's understood that if you took it down, you'd be able to see a mark, the residue of it that he tried to remove it. Yeah. Okay, Savrua, the Gemara understands that my mechitza, what does it mean that they wanted to make a wall? Means Gouda, means they wanted to make a wall. Now, Kidatanya, we have a brisa that supports this, that mechitza means a wall, because mechitza could mean either a noun, a wall, or it could be a verb, it could be a division. The difference is if it's a noun or a wall. Let's just talk this out before we go through this. If mechitza means a division, let's do that. Let's say partners want to divide. They both own both areas together, using both areas together. Now they decide to divide. They said, okay, this is going to be your area, this is going to be my area. So if one of them says, well, we need a wall, I want to be able to do things privately here, I don't want you to look in, so he can demand that the other person pay for the wall, pay for half the wall. And the reason for that would be hezekriya, privacy, the damage that comes from looking in, shmei hezek, is the damage. So because we're now dividing up, so I can demand that you pay for half the wall. Right? This is a classic argument between neighbors, is that come on, we have something in the middle. I want a new fence. I want you to pay for the fence. So here, can you demand that your ex-partner pay for half the wall? So it depends. If we say that shutim shiratzu lasis mechitza means partners that want to divide, then they build the wall in the center, means that you can demand that your partner pay for half the wall. Just the fact that you're dividing gives you the rights to demand that you want privacy, and he has to pay for half the wall. Now, there's another way of reading this Gemara. It goes like this: partners that want to put up a wall, and they agreed that they're going to put up a wall. Then, what are the halachas of that wall? The halachas of that wall is that you do it according to the custom, and each of you have to give half, and therefore, when it falls down, you take half. But if you just divided and you never you just divided and you didn't agree to make a wall, but one of you is claiming, I want a wall, the other guy can say, well, so what? I'm not paying for the wall. Do your stuff inside the house. Yeah, so there's two ways of reading this Mishnah, and the halacha changes drastically. Can one of them demand from the other person that he pay for half the wall just because they divided? Yeah. We're gonna see. I mean, it's obvious to us that hezekriya should be a hezek, that it's a damage. Let's say you have a pool in your backyard, and the reason why your wife and daughters are comfortable swimming there is because you have a fence. No one could look in, and they're comfortable swimming. Then the neighbor goes and puts up a second story with a balcony that looks right over your yard. So there goes the whole pool. I mean, you bought the house because you like the pool. And the only problem is that you can never use it, or your wife and kids and daughters would never want to use it because the neighbors can look right in. So there goes the whole value of the whole property. So hezekriya is a damage. It could be a monetary damage. It could be like a personal damage, that I can't do the things that I need to do. It loses the value of the property. Possibly it lose my usage of the item, of whatever it is, other things that I wanted to do. It limits my life and what I'm able to do because of the hezek. Now, the Gemara is going to accept that there are certain cases that's clearly hezekriya. Here we're discussing, what about a courtyard? There's a hezekriya in a courtyard when there never was a fence yet. There never was a fence there. Do we say that automatically a courtyard is a place where people do the things that they do, and so therefore there is hezekriya, or do we say not? So based on this halacha, do we say this hezekriya Hezek Riyah is this damage that comes from looking in. Hezek, damage, Riyah means vision. We're going to learn the Mishnah differently. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned the part that there was no fence, but what if there was no neighbor?
Then no neighbor means that you can do whatever you want. You're in
Yeah,
charge.
But then they put a neighbor.
Who puts a neighbor?
Oh, they bought the land next to you.
Oh.
If you
Oh,
had-
so that you're going to see on the next page. You're going to see on the next page. Yeah.
They didn't have it around here because there's many houses. But
Right.
sometimes in these fields.
Right. One thing that you have to realize is that the way we build our houses today, at least in Florida, is because we're expecting there to be central air conditioning. So we build it differently. We used to build it because we didn't expect central air conditioning. So we had the whole house was full of these glass windows that you turn and open up. So it was like that. Now, years ago, there was no air conditioning and all of this stuff. So they didn't build the houses to use it the same way. They built the houses expecting to use the courtyard. The cooking was done in the courtyard. They had outdoor ovens. The laundry was done in the courtyard. They had a basin or like something in the ground where they kept the laundry water. There was you were expected to use the courtyard. So now the problem is that you didn't have a private courtyard. The houses were built with a central courtyard, and then sometimes there were two houses where they wanted to divide the courtyard, and they actually wanted to make a private courtyard. So if they wanted to do that, so now they're the way that they're going to use the courtyard is going to be totally different than if it was a public courtyard. They can do more things. They can lay over there. They can sleep there. If it's going to be private. Okay, so we're discussing the translation. It all plays out into the way we analyze the wording mechitza in the Mishnah is going to change the halacha of I'm not sure if it's working as a grammar discussion or if it's working as a halachic discussion, and then I'm not sure where it's starting. If it's the halachic discussion that's changing the grammar, or if it's the grammar that's changing the halacha. Yeah, I would like to say that it's the halacha, which is much more significant than the grammar. And because of the halacha, we're discussing what does the word in the Mishnah mean. So if we start off, what does mechitza mean? It means good. It means the wall. Kedetanya. So we start in a brayso. Mechitza is a kerem shenifritza. Let's say there's a wall between a field, a grain field, and a vineyard. So there's a problem with grain in a vineyard. It becomes a forbidden mixture, kalayim. And you can't eat the grain, you can't eat the grapes. So if there's a fence between the two fields, then you can plant your grain all the way up to the wall. And the same with the vineyard. You can plant it all the way up to the wall. If there is no fence, then you have to distance it 4 amos. So here you had a fence, which means you can plant all the way up. The only problem is that the fence fell down. So we tell the owner of the vineyard, he's considered the one that's doing the damage here. We tell him for some reason. We tell him because it's a problem, both of them, right? It's the grain and but he has work that he needs to do along the edges of the vineyard. So we say he should have put up the fence, or he has to distance his vines. He has to move them back for cubits. So Chazer v'nifitza, he did it and it fell down again. They tell him that you have to build it up. He's like, I'm not doing this. And he doesn't, he forgets about it. He doesn't build it up. Hareza kiddush. So kiddush over here means that it becomes forbidden. The grapes and the grain become forbidden. V'chayiv b'achrayis, he has to pay for the damages. Yeah. Okay, so what we got over here is that when we said the word mechitza, this was just to show me that the word mechitza means a wall, that it's a noun as opposed to a verb. So now we go back to the Mishnah. If you notice, the Mishnah said, Hashutfim sheratzu lasis mechitza. Partners that wanted to make a wall, according to our translation right now. Partners that wanted to make a wall. Who wanted? Both partners. So Why do they have to do it, bake the wall exactly like this? Because they both want it. But if they didn't both want to make the wall, ein mechayven, I say, one partner cannot force the other partner to make a wall.
Thing is that if he creates a wall, it's the other his neighbor, let's say, or his partner, is going to have a wall regardless. One wants, one doesn't.
Yeah.
He'll
So
be affected by
there's
it.
2 points to that though. The neighbor's going to get the wall, but let's see, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven wants the wall. Shimon's like, I'm not getting involved in this. You do whatever you want. So Reuven is going to build a wall on his own property. It's not going to be divided between him and
Right,
Shimon.
yeah.
So Reuven now has to lose out, let's say, 6 tvachim from his property instead of 3 tvachim.
Mhm.
And he also has to pay for all the construction.
Oh, you see, that's not something I considered. What I was thinking about is that his partner Shimon, he's going to have a wall now,
Right,
not on his property, but in fact, it will be the same thing.
Right.
Might not.
right. There's going to be a Mishnah later on where if you can obligate
He doesn't
Shimon,
lose land, but he closed off now.
right? If there's going to be a Mishnah later,
He
if
might
you
not
can,
want to.
if
Like,
you
what,
can obligate the partner to pay because he's benefiting from the wall, because that's gonna come up later. We'll see. Security and all that stuff.
but if he doesn't want a wall, like, I don't know.
Doesn't want the that's if he doesn't want the wall,
In effect, with those conditions, yeah.
right?
But that would, if the other person is building the wall on his land, like, why should he have the same?
Well, he could say you're blocking the sunlight.
Yeah.
I don't get enough breeze now.
If it's close
Right,
area.
right. That's what we're
But
saying, that
there's
he has the right to build the wall. So, but the only
Yeah.
thing here is that it says, we're saying that partners wanted to build a wall, and now we're coming in with halachas of how they have to build it. Because they already made an agreement that they're gonna build a wall. But then the Gemara says, but let's say they never made that agreement. So then, ein mechayven, I say, you can't force him to build a wall. Alma has a kriya, lav shmei hazek. Obviously has a kriya. The damage is not, visual damage is not considered a real damage.
It's like the example you said about having a second story by
Right.
your pool.
So according to this reading of the Mishnah, there's no such thing. Well, not there's no such thing, but in a courtyard, we don't say, a courtyard that hasn't been used privately yet, we don't say is considered visual damage.
It happens all the time. They build this high rise, ocean view, all this stuff. Yeah, that lasts like a year or two. They build another building between that building and the
Yeah.
ocean. So they go to ocean view.
So what happens when you have an ocean view, and then someone else decides to block that ocean view because they just put up a new building? Can the first building complain and say, like, it can limit them? Are they?
Roll up against the water, right? You can't. What space do you have between on the sand?
Well, they had like on 2 sides of Collins Avenue or something. One side was higher and the other side was lower. And then they say, oh, there's a lot of money to be made here. And they just build it right up. And there
That's
goes
that's the problem with buying view property,
Uh-huh,
where you don't control the view.
right. Huh.
You see when you go down Collins at those little, when you're heading south, those short apartment buildings on the right once had nothing between them and the water.
Right. Right.
Didn't we learn just previously about you could be kinda with Re'iyah or not? Why don't we say it's the Lemeka tonight?
Very good.
Rest of the day off.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Maybe that's the connection. That's the connection. The Taisvus has a discussion, the first Taisvus. What's the connection between Baba Basra and Baba Metzia? Maybe that's the connection. He doesn't suggest that, actually. You see, there's a difference over there. Over there, we're talking about if you need to lift something up from Hefker, or if you see it, if that would be enough. But here we're talking about if you're seeing is considered damage.
I thought one of the connections.
But if you could see it and buy it, then obviously your eyes it would be the opposite. If you could see and buy it, then that's action.
Maybe it's connected. Maybe
You could say a Kal V'chomer, if you could buy it, then for sure there's a hezek through it. Buying is a lot more than a hezek. That's ownership. It's Kenyan.
Yeah. Over there, the discussion is only by hefker, though. Yeah, if there's a previous owner, it won't apply for sure. Yeah, it's not directly connected. It's connected more like in drush. It's connected.
Well, one connection, it seems that walls and houses built of stone seem to fall down.
Right, right.
And there, I guess
Yeah,
the concern here is when it falls down and you rebuild it, now you know that each side paid half of it. You don't have arguments.
Right. When you learn it directly, when you learn like Bava Metzia and then Bava Basra, you don't really feel that gap because we're just talking about two people that own the house.
Yeah.
On the upper floor, the lower floor, you're demanding him to build, and so you could build, and yeah, it's just continuing that same argument. There's two people that had a courtyard, and now they're dividing it. You're demanding him to build. You know, it's the same. It's just a continuation of the same topic.
Now, this whole concept of hezek, at least so far, it seems like, I don't know how you would really assess a monetary amount. It's more like if there is hezek, you can force somebody to do something or to
Right.
not do something, but it's hard to see how you attach a value to it.
Right. I think there's a discussion in the Achrayim if hezek is a damage of monetary damage, or if it's just limiting his usage.
Yeah.
It's sort of like constricting him. It's not considered a monetary damage. Is it diminishing the value of the property, or is it just diminishing his usage of something, which is not? It's like tying him up, as opposed to making the property worth less. You know.
But why would it be also obligation on both sides? So like somebody moved in, now that person is the one that's creating the damage. Why is it like an obligation on both of them to pay for the wall equally? Right? Or is it because can the guy that moved in say, well, I moved in, I don't want to, I don't want you to see my backyard, so we build a wall. Well, who told you to move in?
Yeah, so that's a discussion in the next chapter about alanizik laharchikas atzmai or alamazik laharchikas atzmai. Who's the one that has the onus of stopping the hezekriya? Is it the guy? Notice here, there's two people that are building the wall. It's hard to say which one has the obligation, or why the obligation is there. Is it because you have to protect yourself from hezekriya? If you have to protect yourself from you have to stop limiting me, or you have to build it so you don't get limited, or like, who's the one that's really building? I would assume that it's alamazik, that you have to stop the damages. So if Reuben is building it so he doesn't damage Shimon, Shimon is building it so he doesn't damage Reuben. But so that would mean when you move into that property, so you have to take the precautions that you don't cause the damage to someone. Yeah. Okay. So what we're holding right now in the Gemara is that the word mechitza means a wall, and the two partners wanted to build a wall, and so therefore now they have the whatever restrictions they have on how this is requirements they have to how to build this wall, that applies. But if they didn't want to build a wall, then no one can claim that you have to build a wall. The Gemara says maybe not. Ve'ema mechitza plugta. Maybe mechitza doesn't mean a wall. Maybe mechitza means a verb. It's a verb. They wanted to make a division. They wanted to make a division. They wanted to verb a verb. They wanted to make a division. Then the Mishnah comes in and says, oh, you want to divide? Okay, now you have to put up a wall. And where do you see this? We say, and it says in the pasuk that the half of, which would mean like the division of the congregation, is talking about it, the spoils of the war, how they divided up the spoils of Midian. Whatever the case is, ukivan deratzu. Once they decided, the two of them agreed that they're going to split, then then one can force the other one to build a wall, because Hezekriya is considered a Hezek. Alma Hezekriya, Shmei Hezek. We see that Hezekriya is considered a damage. The Gemara says, one second. Just we go into the grammar for a second. You should have said they wanted to divide, not they wanted to make a division. Grammarly would catch this. I'd put a suggestion in there. No, it's a little too many words for that sentence. So Gemara says, well, if you want to try to do it the other way that you had it, Elamai Guda, what do you want to say? That means a wall. When it says partners that wanted to build a wall, mechitza means a wall according to that version. So then they build a wall by Nasakaisel. You don't have to repeat that. Could have used the pronoun. Build it, not the wall. You already said a wall. You said mechitza means a wall. You don't have to say they build a wall. You're allowed to use pronouns, and once you introduce the wall, then you don't have to keep mentioning the wall. You just say build it. So Itana Isai, the Gemara says no. Itana Isai, if it would just use the pronoun, then Havamina b'mesipas b'alma. Then we could have thought that to use just a marker. How did they translate the word mesipas? A sign? Boundary markers. Kamasha, it was probably like little sticks in the ground or along the edge that would. You could have used that. So it has to specify that it's a wall. Yeah. Sorry.
Pegs.
Pegs, which would be the marker to show the division of the land marker. Okay. So we sort of answered that up, that we don't have really a question of according to the opinion of Guda, but we do have the question on according to the one that says lasis mechitza. Why did it have to be lasis mechitza? It could be lachtzis, just to make a division. And Gemara goes on. You build the wall in the middle. Shita, of course, they build a wall in the middle. They just decided that they're going to build a wall. The two decided that they're going to build a wall, and then they build a wall together. We're asking on the question. The question on the opinion that holds mechitza means a guda, means a wall. They decided to build a wall, then they're going to build a wall. It's obvious. It says loy. It's necessary the kadam chad v'ratzeh l'chavri. They both didn't want to build a wall. One of them wanted to build a wall. He had to go and convince his friend. He told him, "Don't you think it would be nice if there'd be a wall here?" And he's appeased him to be able to have the wall there. So now, when it comes to payment, and it comes to the getting the bills, you could tell him, I agreed to the wall because I agreed that it was going to stop the breeze, it was going to stop the air from going in and all of that. He told me it's going to be nice, so I agreed to it. But I didn't want it to take away 3 tvachim from my property. So Kamash Malan, to say that no, once you agreed to have a wall, then you have to accept that as well. So sort of like you hold them to the contract. You made a kinyan here, and you hold them to that contract. He says, no, you agreed that you were going to put up a wall. Now here's all of these. The fine print starts to kick in. I didn't know I was agreeing to this, but the question is why you can't back out now. He says, like, 1 second, I didn't agree to that. Yeah. But here the way the Gemara is spelling it out is that he only thought he was agreeing to to lose the breeze and to lose the vision of to be able to look over to the other person's whatever there was to see over there. But he would have liked that, to be able to see the nice flowers or something. And now he's saying, well, there's some fine print here that you didn't realize when you signed, and now you have to pay for that. Now the Gemara says, okay, according to all of this, we're following the view that Hezekriya lav shmei Hezek. Hezekriya is not considered damage. And the only reason why they have to build a wall is because he agreed to building a wall. They both agreed. We're going to have a bunch of questions on this. And the Gemara says, Simin Gina Kaisel Kaifen Cholken, Chalenas to Rav Nachman. A bunch of, what do you call it? 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 What do small questions that we're going to have on this opinion, and each one is going to get answered up. And as we answer it up, we also get a better understanding of what this opinion is. Tashma v'chein begina. Same thing is by a garden. By a garden, you also have to build a wall. Says, so the Gemara thinks, why would you have to build a wall? Because the person in the garden can look into the person in the courtyard, and he's causing damage to because of Hezekiah by looking in. The guy in the courtyard can't do all the things that he wants to do. The Gemara says, Gina Shani, no, a garden is different. It's actually a totally different story. By a garden, everyone agrees that there's a type of Hezekiah. It's possibly not even called Hezekiah. But there's another type of damage. Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. Rav Abba says name of Rav Huna, name of Rav. Person's not allowed to stand at the edge of his friend's field in the time when the stalks are growing, because he creates an ayin hara. He looks at them. Yeah. He looks at them admiringly. He could ruin their production. Creates an evil eye. So over here it's even worse. We were discussing a courtyard. If there Hezekiah, he said, well, there has to be Hezekiah because look what's going on in a garden. He said, no, a garden has a worse of a Hezekiah because people looking into the garden cause an ayin hara. So that's even worse. Over there, everyone agrees that there's an issue. The Gemara's question here is so vague. It doesn't even tell me why it's asking. Why would Gina be more of a? What is it? Is there? Do you have a comment by you? By stating that one gardener can force his neighbor to assist in erecting a wall without agreeing to do so, we may infer that visual trespass is considered damaging. Now, that was not clear. The Gemara says, V'chein begina, that one gardener can force his neighbor to erect a wall without agreeing to do so. I didn't have that in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, V'chein begina, that just like whatever it was by the Chatzah, they both agreed. So by the Gina, if they both agree. Gemara says that no, by a Gina, there's over there he can force his friend to put up a wall, because over there it's much more since in the courtyard the absence of a wall can only cause inconveniences and loss of privacy. The Gemara cannot prove from the case of a garden that visual trespass is likewise considered injurious in a courtyard. The gaze of a neighbor can cause actual monetary damage through ayin hara. Yeah, that's where Chaim's Vart comes in. That the gaze is considered an action. Yeah.
But ayin hara is limited to garden, to vegetables. I mean, it applies to people too. Everything can be affected by ayin hara, no? Just
the Gemara over here thinks that it's much worse by the garden. That's like the original ayin hara, things that are growing. And, yeah.
Well, Matthew said 99% of people
So that's what we like. That may be their own ayin hara. You gotta look. We gotta go back into that. Is it the ayin hara that other people cause them, or is it the ayin hara that they have their own jealousy? Hill is quoting the Gemara in Bamitzia that says 99% pass away because of ayin hara. So which means that there's ayin hara on everything. But I'm asking if that's an ayin hara of they pass away because of their own jealousy, or they pass away because they caused other people. But they're victims of ayin hara. Yeah. Okay. Next question is, I'm sorry, we're not finished with this. It says v'chein ketani, but you said it's exactly the same. V'chein means and also. It says no, that's v'chein. That and also is talking about agbil v'gazis, that the requirements of the wall are going to be the same requirements as a courtyard, which could be that it's the 6 tvachim wall or it's the 5 tvachim wall. That's what we meant the same. But actually, a garden has different strengths of forcing the other person to build a wall than a courtyard does. Tashima, kaisel chatzish nafal. Come listen. There's a Mishnah that discusses if a wall of a courtyard collapsed. One person can force his neighbor to build it up to 4 amas. How can you force him to build a wall? It must be because of Hezekriya. The Gemara says, no, nafal shiny. That's because the wall was there before. And when the wall was there before, then both people were used to behaving in a certain way. Now you're limiting them. We're talking about when there was never a wall. They never were accustomed to that. Nafal shiny. If the wall was there and then it fell down, then everyone agrees that this has a kriya. That's like similar to a house. Everyone agrees that this has a kriya in a house. You can't just, look into my house. So here, when there was the wall was already up in the courtyard, so then everyone agrees it has a kriya. The Gemara says, "Karla, my Karla, why did you even think that this should be a question?" The Gemara says, "Seifet strichale," because midalet amasulamile and mechayven. I see it says from 4 cubits and up, you don't require him to build a wall. We thought that the reason why it says nafal is to tell me a different chiddush. Really, you could require him always to build a wall. Why over here does it say nafal? Because we're trying to let him know that you can't require him to build it more than 4 cubits, even though originally the wall was, let's say, 8 cubits, and now it fell down. Now they're building it back up. So one partner can say, one side can say, I'm not building it more than 4 cubits. So that could have been the chiddush of this Mishnah. So the Gemara thinks that maybe that's the chiddush of this Mishnah. But really, you can require a person to build a wall even initially. Gemara tells me no. Initially, you can't require someone to build a wall. Nafal shiny, as I could have learned it differently. And the Gemara concludes that nafal shiny, that no, you don't learn it differently. This is the way this Mishnah is totally different because there was one time a wall there. Tashma kaifanais livnais beishar deles lachatzer. One partner can force the other people in the courtyard to build the gate, the front door, and the front gateway and the door to a courtyard. Shmamina hezek riyashmei hezek. Why do you have to build that front gate and the door? That's because people walking by can look right in. So you see, there's hezekriya. People walking by can look in. Then that's going to cause damage to the usage of that property. Gemara says no, hezekah derabim shiny. That's because it's public. We're talking about if just your neighbor is going to be considered hezekriya. But everyone would agree that you have to stop the public from looking in. The yachid loy. There's no hezekriya by an individual, but just by your neighbor, just by the one person that's living there. Tashema, we have another question. You don't divide a courtyard unless each one gets 4 cubits. If one person says, I want to divide the courtyard, the other guy can say, it's not worth dividing because we're not going to each have enough space to be able to do something. It's going to be too small. It's better that we each have a shared portion than to each of us have our own portion and not have enough space to do anything. But if there is enough for each of them to do something, in other words, if there is 4 cubits in each one, then cholkin, then you do divide it. My love, b'kaisel. Obviously, with the wall, that means that this has a kriya, even though it's just one other person in the courtyard, it still has a kriya. Gemara says, "Loi b'masipas b'alma." It doesn't say that you would put up a wall. You would just put up pegs, markers to divide it, but not a wall. It's still very possible that there's no hezekriya by another individual. in the courtyard. Tashima, come and listen. Whenever you're building a house next to someone else, you're building windows, you're building a wall opposite someone else's house that has windows. So you have to make sure that you're not within 4 amas of the window, either below it or above it. Because if you're 4 amas below it, you can stand on the wall and look into his window, because the walls were built a little wider than a fence. And if you're within 4 amas above it, you could sit on the wall and look down into his window, so which is too close. Or if you're building it right up, you can't build it right against the window because you'll be blocking his sunlight. So you have to be 4 amas either below, or 4 amas above, and 4 amas away. So Vitani Allah, the Brisa explains that above, so that you don't look inside. Malmata and below, below, so you don't stand on the wall, and opposite it, so you don't darken it. We see that there's a problem of looking in. There's a problem of Hezekriya. The Gemara says, yeah, Hezekah Dabaya shiny, of course. A house is for sure a Hezekriya. We weren't discussing a house, we were discussing a courtyard. So the Mishnah is like restricting it's qualifying what our question is. We know this Hezekriya. Where do we know the Hezekriya? When you used to use the courtyard privately and then the wall collapsed. We know this Hezekriya in a public looking in. We know this Hezekriya in a house. We know this Hezekriya in a garden. Question is, in the courtyard, when there's only one other person there, is there Hezekriya in that area? Tashima, we'll get to the bottom hopefully. Tashima Damar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. It says Gaga Samach Lachatz Chaveros and Lemaika Gavaya Dalet Amas. Let's say one person has a courtyard that's right at the same level as the next person's roof. It was built on a hill. So this guy's roof, here's his house. This is this guy's courtyard and his house. So the courtyard here is directly opposite this guy's roof. So it says they build a wall. So you see this Hezekriya. And it says, well, over there it's different. Shani Hasim Darmalei Balachatzel Balagag. Whether the courtyard tells the owner of the roof, Lididi Kviali Tashmishi, Lididach Lake Kvialach Tashmishi, Layadana Bahayidna Salikas Vasas, it's Tanamina. He says like this. He says, I'm always using the courtyard. You're not always using the roof. I get on the courtyard, I go, I sunbathe over there, I do my things. I have no idea when you're coming. You all of a sudden pop up and you shock me. So if it would be 2 courtyards, I would know that I needed to be careful. 2 courtyards, because a courtyard everyone uses all the time. But because you're only sometimes there, it's even worse. Because I'm expecting that I can do everything that I want to do because you're not there. And all of a sudden you come in with this shock. I don't know when you're coming. So I have to dress more differently and all of that. So therefore over there this going to be Hezekriya. Yeah, so we just qualified it one more time that on the roof would cause Hezekriya to a courtyard more than 2 courtyards to get together. Okay, let's leave it over here. Have a good Shabbos, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Seems very appropriate to be discussing